The McDonnell F-101 Voodoo, a sleek, powerful, and at times controversial aircraft of the early Cold War era, stands as a fascinating example of how the United States Air Force sought to balance rapidly evolving strategic requirements with technological ambition during the 1950s and 1960s, a period when the nuclear arms race, the threat of Soviet bombers, and the dawn of jet-powered supersonic warfare drove an urgent demand for aircraft that could do more, fly faster, and adapt to missions unimagined only a decade before. And although the Voodoo was not as famous or long-lived as some of its contemporaries such as the F-4 Phantom II or the F-100 Super Sabre, it nonetheless played a critical role in U.S. air defense, tactical nuclear strike planning, and aerial reconnaissance, leaving behind a legacy defined by both its achievements and its limitations. The Voodoo's origins can be traced back to the immediate post-World War II years, when McDonnell Aircraft Corporation, already established with the F-H Phantom and F-2H Banshee naval fighters, sought to push into the Air Force market with a long-range escort fighter concept capable of accompanying the new generation of strategic bombers deep into Soviet territory. This project, initially designated XF-88, first flew in 1948, and although it did not enter production, its design laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the F-101. As the USAF's needs shifted in the early 1950s with the realization that long-range bomber escorts were less critical than fast, nuclear-capable strike aircraft able to deliver tactical atomic weapons against Soviet targets, McDonnell reconfigured the XF-88 lineage into what became the F-101 Voodoo, and when the first prototype flew in September 1954, it represented a bold step forward in speed, size, and performance for a single-seat fighter, with its twin Pratt Whitney J57 turbojet engines providing over 10,000 pounds of thrust each, allowing it to fly faster than Mach 1 at altitude and making it one of the fastest operational jets of its time. The first production version, the F-101A, entered service in 1957 as a single-seat fighter-bomber designed to carry nuclear weapons, particularly the Mk-7 and later tactical nuclear bombs, over long distances at high subsonic or supersonic speeds. The aircraft was large, sleek, and imposing, with a long fuselage optimized for supersonic flight, swept wings set at 36 degrees, and distinctive tall vertical tail surfaces, and it quickly earned the nickname, 10 Wonder, from pilots and crews. Yet while the F-101A impressed with its speed, setting records in the late 1950s for long-distance flights and demonstrating the ability to dash supersonically with nuclear ordnance, it also revealed shortcomings, high landing speeds, limited maneuverability compared to smaller fighters, and maintenance challenges due to its powerful but temperamental J57 engines. The reconnaissance version, the RF-101A and later RF-101C, soon emerged as perhaps the most successful and enduring variant of the Voodoo, as the long fuselage and powerful engines made it ideal for carrying advanced camera equipment while still achieving high-speed penetration of hostile airspace. These aircraft would later prove invaluable in the Vietnam War, where they performed some of the most dangerous missions of the conflict, flying unarmed and alone at low or medium altitude to gather photographic intelligence over heavily defended targets in North Vietnam, braving flak and surface-to-air missiles with only their speed and pilot skill as protection, and the RF-101 crews gained a reputation for bravery and resilience, suffering high loss rates but providing critical intelligence that shaped U.S. air operations. Another major branch of the Voodoo family was the F-101B, a two-seat interceptor variant developed in response to the USAF's Air Defense Command requirements for an all-weather, supersonic interceptor capable of countering Soviet long-range bombers threatening the continental United States, and entering service in 1959, the F-101B was equipped with a second crew member for radar operation, an advanced Hughes MG-13 fire control system, and the ability to carry AIM-4 Falcon air-to-air missiles as well as the unguided Genie nuclear-tipped rocket, a weapon designed to destroy entire formations of bombers with a single blast. In this role, the Voodoo stood guard over North America throughout the height of the Cold War, stationed at bases across the United States and Canada through the Royal Canadian Air Force, which operated the CF-101, and it formed a vital part of NORAD's air defense shield for more than 2 decades. The F-101B, with its characteristic large radome and twin-seat cockpit, was less nimble than frontline fighters, but as an interceptor it was fast, powerful, and intimidating, and its crews trained constantly for the terrifying prospect of launching nuclear-tipped rockets against incoming Soviet bomber streams, a mission they thankfully never had to perform in reality. The CF-101 Voodoo became a cornerstone of Canadian air defense from the early 1960s through the 1980s, serving with distinction and being remembered fondly by Canadian aviators for its speed, reliability, and imposing presence, even as newer designs gradually eclipsed it in technological sophistication. In terms of records and milestones, the F-101 played a prominent role in the Century series of fighters, which included the F-100, F-102, F-104, F-105, and F-106, and like many of its stablemates it was at the cutting edge of performance during its prime. In 1957, an F-101A set a world speed record of 1,207 miles per hour, briefly holding the title of the fastest jet in the world, while our F-101 variants conducted long-distance reconnaissance flights at speeds and ranges that pushed the boundaries of what contemporary fighters could achieve. Operationally, however, the Voodoo often found itself overshadowed. As a fighter-bomber it was soon supplanted by the Republic F-105 Thunderchief, which carried heavier loads at longer ranges. As an interceptor it was eventually replaced by the Convair F-106 Delta Dart and later the F-4 Phantom II, and as a reconnaissance platform it eventually gave way to more advanced RF-4C Phantom variants. Nevertheless, during its years of service, particularly in the late 1950s and 1960s, the Voodoo filled critical gaps and performed demanding missions that no other aircraft could handle as effectively at the time. Its role in Vietnam, while limited compared to the massive deployments of F-4s, F-105s, and F-100s, was nonetheless vital. Our F-101 pilots flew thousands of sorties, photographing bridges, supply routes, missile sites, and airfields, often returning with their aircraft riddled with damage, and though many were lost, their intelligence was irreplaceable. Stories from Vietnam recount our F-101s flying at treetop level at nearly Mach 1 to evade enemy defenses, their cameras whirring as flak bursts erupted around them, and returning with images that allowed U.S. planners to target strikes more effectively. These missions highlighted the bravery of Voodoo crews and cemented the aircraft's place in reconnaissance history. From a technical perspective, the Voodoo was a marvel of 1950s engineering, combining a long, narrow fuselage with powerful engines, sophisticated fire control radar in the interceptor models, and advanced camera systems in the reconnaissance models, but it also embodied the compromises of its era: thirsty engines that limited range without large drop tanks, maintenance demands that tested ground crews, and flight characteristics that could be unforgiving to inexperienced pilots, particularly during takeoff and landing when its high-wing loading demanded careful handling. Despite these challenges, those who flew it often developed a respect, even affection, for the Voodoo, praising its raw power, sleek lines, and ability to accelerate with authority when needed, and its distinctive howl and thunderous roar became familiar sounds at bases where it operated. Production of the F-101 series totaled just over 800 aircraft, far fewer than the thousands of F-4 Phantoms or F-100s built, but the impact of those aircraft was disproportionately large given their relatively limited numbers. In Canada, the CF-101 served from 1961 until 1984, guarding North American skies as part of NORAD and earning the affectionate nickname, the Voodoo, among Canadian aviation enthusiasts. In the United States, the last Air National Guard units retired their F-101Bs in 1982, marking the end of the Voodoo's frontline service after more than 2 decades. Today, surviving examples are preserved in museums and static displays across North America, with their long, lean fuselages and distinctive twin-engine nacelles still evoking the high-speed glamour of the Century series era. In retrospect, the McDonnell F-101 Voodoo was a transitional aircraft, bridging the gap between the subsonic jets of the early Cold War and the true supersonic multi-role fighters that followed, and while it may not have achieved the lasting fame of the Phantom or the Mustang, it was a critical piece of the puzzle in America's Cold War defense strategy, a jet that flew faster, farther, and with more daring missions than many give it credit for. Its reconnaissance variants wrote a heroic chapter in Vietnam, its interceptor variants guarded North America with nuclear rockets ready, and its fighter-bomber versions proved that speed and nuclear punch could be married in a single airframe. In short, the Voodoo deserves remembrance as more than just another Century series jet but as a workhorse of a dangerous era when the world lived on the edge of nuclear war and pilots climbed into cockpits not knowing if they might be called to deliver Armageddon or risk their lives for a strip of reconnaissance film. The F-101 was not perfect. Few aircraft are, but it was fast, versatile, and courageous in service, and its story is an essential part of the larger history of Cold War aviation, a reminder of the extraordinary machines and extraordinary people who stood watch in the most perilous decades of the 20th century.